Britain's most prolific child killer, Lucy Letby, a nurse trusted with the lives of newborn babies, today found guilty of 7 murders and the attempted murder of 6 more innocent children. You're watching a Sky News special, Baby Killer, How the Police Caught Lucy Letby. In the next hour, details of a harrowing 10-month trial and the extensive police investigation to catch a murderer. We'll examine why anyone would harm children on this scale and look at the failings that left her free to kill for so long.
Once we realised we had great concerns about Lucy Letby and she was removed from the neonatal unit, why did it take 11 months for the police to then be called in?
We'll hear from the families of some of the victims on their long quest for justice. And I speak to the mother of a prematurely born baby who believes her child was targeted by Lucy Letby.
Her job was to care, to heal.
Devious, cold-blooded, calculated.
Lucy Letby attacked those she was meant to protect.
She used that normality and the trust that she gained to commit crimes of an unimaginable scale.
It's horrific to think of because you wouldn't think that nobody would be capable of that.
Lucy Letby will be remembered as a killer with victims so small they could be carried in one hand.
Good evening from the Countess of Chester Hospital. This is where Lucy Letby worked as a nurse in the neonatal unit, trusted to keep newborn babies alive during their first hours and days in the world. Instead, she murdered 7 children and attempted to kill 6 more. Her crimes make her the most prolific child killer in modern British history. She refused to appear in court for the final verdicts and will be sentenced on Monday, when again she is expected to be absent. The government has already announced an independent inquiry into how she was able to continue working here, even after consultants warned hospital bosses that she was dangerous. Sky's North of England correspondent Caterina Vitozzi followed the trial at Manchester Crown Court and sent this report, which I should warn does contain distressing details.
Hello, Lucy, is it?
Yes.
Hello, my name's Chester Police. Locate Stefan, 2 seconds.
Yeah.
Lucy Letby's crimes are difficult to comprehend. Her victims, babies, so tiny, so fragile, so many. But her arrest in 2018 led today to her conviction, and now this shocking title as the most prolific child killer of modern British history.
Lucy Letby was entrusted to protect some of the most vulnerable babies. Little did those working alongside her know that there was a murderer in their midst.
The jury at Manchester Crown Court deliberated for 22 days, agreeing that Letby killed 7 babies and attacked 6 others at the Countess of Chester Hospital. But in court and in police questioning, she always repeatedly denied she'd done anything wrong.
Did you have any concerns that there was a rise in the mortality rate?
Yes. I think we don't just notice as a team in general, the nursing staff, that this was a rise compared to previous years.
This used to be Nursery 1, also coined the hot room.
But we now know colleagues on this neonatal unit raised suspicions about Letby months before bosses moved her off the ward and well over a year before police were called in.
This case has had a profound impact on our patients and our local community, and also our staff, who come to work every day determined to provide safe and high-quality care for all of our patients. Our staff are devastated by what has happened, and we are committed to ensuring that lessons continue to be learned.
The government has asked for an independent inquiry into this, and Cheshire Police have confirmed they will look into the other years of Letby's career to see if she harmed other babies. Lucy Letby decided not to leave the courthouse cells today and appear in the dock to hear those verdicts being announced. But many of the victims' families were here, the majority in tears, comforting each other. The mother of one child held a stuffed toy rabbit to her face as they learnt that a woman they thought would care for their children actually attacked and killed them.
This has been a long and emotional journey for all of the families involved in this case. I speak on behalf of the entire prosecution team when I say that all of their babies will forever be in our hearts.
Lucy Letby's parents have also been in court, at times mouthing "I love you" to their daughter. But families of the victims say for them this trial has been utter hell. These are the parents of child L and M, twin boys that Lucy Letby attacked, speaking to media for the very first time.
There's no doubt it's going to affect me for the rest of my life. There's no way you can get away from it. It's always going to be there in the back of your mind. It's been hell, to be honest.
Very, very horrendous. I want a life sentence.
But it's not going to do justice no matter what. She's taken lives. She's tried to take other babies' lives. So whatever sentence she gets, it's not going to be enough. It will be justice, but it won't be enough, whatever the sentence comes.
But it is a sentence that Lucy Letby will not hear in person. Leaving the courthouse today in a prison van, she said she won't appear at Monday's sentencing. The woman who hid her crimes behind a smile and an NHS badge, now refusing to let victims' parents see her as justice is served.
The details are just so difficult to listen to, aren't they? And Katerina joins me now from Manchester Crown Court. Katerina, we know that these verdicts have actually been delivered over a number of days. A reporting restriction has been lifted and we're now able to explain more clearly what happened. What was the reaction from the public gallery on those days that the verdicts came, and indeed the reaction from Letby herself?
Extremely emotional, to sum it up in just a couple of words, Jonathan, seeing the families of those babies in the public gallery, both during the course of this trial and as they heard those verdicts read out. There were many in tears. These were families who didn't know each other before and during the time that their babies were on the neonatal ward at the Countess of Chester Hospital. But over the course of this 9-month trial and month of jury deliberation, they have become a comfort to each other. And as they heard those guilty verdicts being read out and many burst into tears, we saw parents consoling each other. We saw one mother holding a stuffed toy, a small rabbit, close to her face, burrowing her face into it and crying into it as she heard that Lucy Letby had been found guilty of murdering her child. Also in the public gallery were the parents of Lucy Letby, as you saw in my report there. As you say, these verdicts had been delivered in several sets over the course of a few days. Lucy Letby was present for the first 2 times that verdicts were delivered. In one of them, the initial one where she was found guilty of 2 counts of attempted murder, she burst into tears. The second time, where she was found guilty of counts of murder, her mother in particular cried openly in the courtroom and could be heard saying, "This can't be right, this can't be serious." However, from that point onwards, Lucy Letby chose not to leave her cells in the court building and not to be in the dock to hear further guilty verdicts and further verdicts being read out. And we understand from her defence team, as you heard in my report, that she won't be in the court for sentencing on Monday either. Very distressing for the parents, of course, to hear that. They want to see justice served. The parents we've spoken to say it is so important now for them to see Lucy Letby be given the ultimate penalty. And also, of course, for those parents now, so many questions about what could have been done differently. We know
from this trial, from speaking to colleagues of Lucy Letby, that there were suspicions raised about her on the ward by colleagues to hospital bosses months before she was moved off the ward. Those are questions the families now want answers to. And today we've also been speaking to one of those consultants who raised suspicion, John Gibbs, a consultant on the neonatal ward, who raised suspicions in 2015 to hospital bosses. Speaking to Sky News earlier today, this is what he said.
Once we realised, we had great concerns about Lucy Letby and she was removed from the neonatal unit, why did it take 11 months for the police to then be called in? But that's something that we paediatricians have to look at for why we didn't stop her earlier, but also the managers need to answer for why it took so long for the police to come in. If something like this, hopefully not on the same scale, ever was to happen again, we need to learn lessons for how long it took in this particular case to see could it be done better in the future.
And I think over the days, weeks and indeed months to come, we will hear more about those questions. There will be questions for the hospital to answer. We know now that the government wants to launch an independent inquiry to what happened here. But I think it is today, now, in this moment, outside this courtroom, a chance to reflect on the families of those victims, those families who have so bravely sat and listened to such distressing detail, the harrowing moments of how their children died or how their children were attacked. Families that the police say have sat here with dignity and faced and heard those details, whilst Lucy Letby today decided she didn't.
Yeah, Katerina, families who've had this hanging over them for so many years. Thank you very much, Katerina Vitozzi there outside court in Manchester. Well, police are continuing to investigate other suspicious incidents during Lucy Letby's 4 years here at the Countess Hospital. In total, they'll be reviewing the care of up to 4,000 babies. But what about the investigation to catch her in the first place? Our correspondent, Tom Parminter, has been working with our data and forensics team to analyse how one of the UK's worst child killers was caught.
It's the case nobody wanted to believe could be true. But for the police, convicting Lucy Letby was the culmination of a painstaking and distressing investigation.
The key aspect of this investigation has been always asking ourselves, who else could it be, if not her, and what else could it be?
Lucy Letby started working at the Countess of Chester Hospital in January 2012, just before her 22nd birthday. She joined as a nurse in the neonatal unit. But from January 2015, the mortality rate at the unit began to rise above what might be considered normal rates. On June the 8th, a baby boy, child A, died. He and his twin sister were being cared for in Nursery 1, the room for the most poorly patients. At 8 o'clock, Lucy Letby was half an hour into her night shift. She was the designated nurse for the baby boy that night. 26 minutes later, Letby called a doctor over to child A's incubator. He was deteriorating rapidly. Staff began resuscitation and an on-call consultant responded to the emergency. The baby died just before 9 o'clock, less than 90 minutes into Letby's shift. Air had been injected into his bloodstream.
It was unexpected and unexplained are two words they don't deal with in neonatal medicine. If a child collapses, it's usually explainable, and it's usually always expected.
Then on the 5th of August, another baby, child F, was in Nursery 2. Letby was looking after another infant in the same room, but at 1:54 in the morning, child F suffered an unexpected drop in his blood sugar and a surge in his heart rate. The baby survived, and a blood test revealed he'd been given insulin that he didn't need. There was no reason why. No baby on the unit was being prescribed it. It was kept in a locked fridge next to the nurse's station. That summer of 2015 was when colleagues became suspicious. They were told it was very unlikely there was anything going on and were urged not to make a fuss. Dr. Ravi Jairam was one of those doctors who spoke out. He said he'd become extremely uncomfortable with Lucy Letby working on the unit. And this pattern continued as there were more babies who lost their lives or suffered unexpected collapses. On the 23rd of June 2016, Letby was looking after child O, a triplet. The baby boy became unwell. Another nurse suggested the child be moved back to nursery 1, where the most poorly babies are cared for. But Letby disagreed, and the baby collapsed. He recovered, but suffered 2 further collapses, and at 5:47, the baby was pronounced dead. Consultant Dr. Breary believed the baby should have responded better to resuscitation. Child O was found to have an injury to his liver and air injected into his bloodstream. The following day, Child O's brother, Child P, another of the triplets, died under Lucy Letby's care. It prompted Dr. Breary to say that he wasn't happy with Lucy Letby working on the unit, but he was told there was no evidence against her and that she would continue nursing. But Letby's suspicious colleagues were right. She'd been attacking babies here for the past 12 months. Over the next few months, the hospital carried out a review as to what was happening inside the neonatal unit. Lucy Letby was then moved to an administrative role. In November 2016, an external report found no definitive explanation for the high number of deaths. But in May the following year, the hospital called in the police.
The initial focus was around the hypotheses of what could have occurred. So a generic hypothesis of it could be natural occurring deaths, it could be natural occurring collapses, it could be an organic reason, it could be a virus, and then one of the hypotheses was that obviously it could be inflicted harm.
The more experts they talked to, the more evidence they gathered, the more the case started to take shape. Then, on the 3rd of July 2018, Lucy Letby was arrested.
What was clear at that point was that Lucy Letby was the consistent in all this. She was the thread running through them all. And therefore, in evidential terms, the biggest source of evidence.
Searches of her home in Chester and her parents' house in Hereford uncovered patient records and handwritten notes that gave clues about her state of mind. Among the scrawled notes were the words, "I am evil. I did this." In her bedroom, stuffed into these shopping bags, were hospital handover sheets. In total, 257 were found. Many included details of the babies Letby had allegedly harmed. Her social media showed searches for 11 of the families affected. Police also discovered that she sent one of her alleged victims' parents a sympathy card on the day of the baby's funeral. She kept an image of the card on her phone. Crucially, the police also analysed her shift patterns. Look at the line of crosses. They showed that Letby was the only member of staff on shift when all the incidents took place. On the 11th of November 2020, over 2 years after she was arrested, Lucy Letby was charged with murder and attempted murder.
That realisation of, my God, somebody has taken the life of these babies and somebody has been responsible for these life-changing injuries to these babies, and nobody could say anything. And everybody looked at each other and there was not a word spoken.
Letby always denied harming the babies in her care, but the evidence told a different, more harrowing story.
Well, as we've been seeing, the scale of this investigation was huge. Thousands of pieces of evidence, hundreds of witness interviews, 30 hours of police interview with Lucy Letby herself. And as we heard in Tom's report, whistleblowers who were ignored. Whistleblowers here at the hospital, senior consultants who were told, don't make a fuss. Tom is here with me this evening. He's been following this case right from the start. And Tom, people will be incredulous, won't they, when they hear that there were people inside the hospital, senior doctors, working alongside Lucy Letby, who said early on, look, there's an issue here, an issue with this woman, and yet were ignored.
There's little doubt this is one of the most chilling and darkest episodes that we have ever seen in the history of the NHS. And it is a marker, I think, of the gravity of what has occurred here, that within an hour or so of the news coming from the court in Manchester, the government in Westminster confirmed that there would be an independent inquiry into what has happened here. Yes, there was a killer at work in the neonatal unit, and that is something that you struggle to believe could be true, but it very sadly was in this instance. And of course, the families have been through an utterly unbelievable 7 years, the hospital community here as well. Think about how appalling it must feel to be part of the teams who do their very best every day to save life, to coax these premature babies from the margins of life and death to leaving the hospital doors here in a baby carrier and going on to live lives as they should do. And it just goes against every instinct of the overwhelming majority of every NHS worker, and it is something that is deeply upsetting. And the clinicians who blew the whistle have been talking today about just how challenging those questions are for the trust and the management team who were in charge at the time. Remember, this was 7 years ago. The Countess confirming today that changes, of course, have been made since that, but that is too late for those families who lost their babies.
And of course, one of those consultants even saying that he was accused of bullying by Letby herself.
Yes, that is Dr. Ravi Jairam. There are a number of others who raised the concerns. They did the right thing, and I think that is what is most galling to those consultants, that in speaking up, you have to have faith that the system in the NHS is going to work, and it clearly didn't in this case, and that is why the hospital, NHS England have all said that they will cooperate fully with the inquiry that will come in future months. It could take years, though, to get to the end of that inquiry. It is a hugely appalling, upsetting case to have just sat through from our perspective, reporting on these details. But for the families at the heart of this, it is just something that beggars belief, really, as to the suffering that they have been through over the course of 7 years. And of course, there are also babies who did grow up but have been profoundly affected by the care and the sabotage of that care by Lucy Letby.
Tell us about one of those babies, because our thoughts today are, of course, with the victims, the 7 who were murdered, but also those 6 that she attempted to murder.
Yes, one of those cases is baby G. And we have to remember, they have names, these babies, and they have families, and they are someone's son or daughter. But baby G's case was one of the many troubling cases, of course, that were looked at here. The most premature baby of those who were looked at, and a baby that did survive. She was born here in September 2015, actually at Arrow Park Hospital, and then came here for treatment. And it's only when she came here that Lucy Letby had access to her, and we know now that she's been convicted of 2 of the allegations of attempted murder in relation to baby G. And when she was born at just 23 weeks old. She weighed 1 pound 2 ounces and was given just a 5% chance of life. And she responded well to the care she received at Arrow Park and here. But when Lucy Letby was in charge of her care, we know that the jury are sure that she attacked her twice. And we know now that she is a 7-year-old girl. And her dad gave evidence to the trial, and he said, after she was attacked, she seemed different and did not respond to my voice anymore. We do not know what her life expectancy is.
so tough, isn't it? And we heard from Katerina a little earlier about the reaction from some of those family members in court. Many of them have sat through months of evidence in Manchester. Others here in Chester, a live video feed from Manchester allowing them to watch proceedings at Chester Crown Court.
That's right, these families are spread around this part of the northwest. This is a hospital that is a fairly typical general hospital. It serves the area around it, so these families come from Cheshire, from North Wales and the surrounding areas. And it is just unimaginable what they have been through the course of this. And I'm sure that while many of them will welcome the news that there will be an independent inquiry to try to ensure that culture change has to be enforced and that this simply can never happen again. But we've seen many NHS scandals, sadly, over the years where we hear that lessons will be learned. But so often people who are responsible in those positions of management move on to different trusts or retire quietly. And accountability, I think, is at the heart of what we've learned today about the depth and breadth of this horrifying case. And it is something that will, of course, add to the families who will try to pick their way through an inquiry. They've been through this court case and sitting there through it, I don't know how some of them have got through the court case, but they have. They've got to this point and know that while there will be a government inquiry, an independent inquiry, that will again see the details of the care of their loved ones, in some cases the deaths at the hands of Lucy Letby, looked at all over again.
Yeah, the hell that they've been through, you can only imagine, you know, the month waiting for the jury to return their verdicts, the 9 months of the trial, the years before that waiting for the trial to happen. Tom, thank you so much. You're watching a Sky News special. Coming up after the break, we will be profiling the life of Lucy Letby, asking what on earth drove her to kill 7 babies.
I'm Neville Lazarus and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi. We take you to the heart of the story that shapes our world.
There's always more to the news than a headline. We want to discover, to delve a little deeper, to find out what's really going on. Explanation, analysis, the people at the heart of every story. I'm Neil Patterson, and this is the Sky News Daily Podcast. Alex Crawford joining us now from Ukraine.
Their personal possessions are all scattered around the place.
Our economics and data editor, Ed Conway, try and make sense of the big numbers for us.
Things can change incredibly quickly, and that's what they have done.
So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm Katie Spencer, and I'm Sky News' arts and entertainment correspondent.
The 5 of us have made it out of the car.
Welcome to Backstage, the film and TV podcast.
Hello again, welcome back. Well, after a trial lasting 10 months, Lucy Letby has been convicted of murdering 7 babies and attempting to kill 6 other infants. She could face further legal action. Prosecutors are now discussing whether to seek a retrial on 6 more charges of attempted murder. The 33-year-old nurse is now the UK's most prolific child serial killer in modern times. Well, let's get more on the case. I'm joined now by criminal psychologist Dr. David Holmes. Dr. Holmes, good to have you on the programme. I guess, first of all, your reaction today, having listened to much of the evidence over the last few months, having seen coverage of it, your reaction to those verdicts?
I was very relieved, because it's always very touch and go when it comes to these kind of cases, because it's a situation where you have not got any really concrete evidence, one piece like a CCTV camera footage or a witness, etc. All you've got is accumulation of, basically very low-level evidence, coincidences, etc. But when you actually accumulate a large number of these, something called a Bayesian analysis, it's actually more statistically sound to have 100 little arrows pointing towards Lucy and none pointing away from her. And I think that is how justice was actually reached today.
Yes, this case was fascinating, wasn't it? Because a lot of the evidence was circumstantial. As you say, incredibly, no CCTV cameras within the unit itself, and also no one witnessed her and could say so for 100% certain that she was attacking a child. No one saw her physically doing that. And also, I'm interested to get your thoughts on the lack of apparent motive.
Well, it's very difficult in these cases, what we call Munchausen by proxy, to ascertain what the motive is, because it seems completely, transparent. It doesn't exist as far as a normal person looking at the case would ever think, because it is clearly outside the realms of normal behaviour, normal thinking. But in this particular case, you can see that there's a glimmer there of someone who has no empathy, has no real feelings for others, someone who is born with psychopathic tendencies, and who has focused on this idea of controlling and harming children as being something that gives them satisfaction or pleasure in some bizarre way. It may have taken a lifetime to arrive at that kind of conclusion that that is what she wants to do, because someone with psychopathic tendencies does not get the kind of sensitive enjoyment from life that most of us do. So they kind of seek what it is, and it often ends up being manipulating, controlling, or even harming others.
We know that she'd been a student here at the hospital before getting a full-time job, and it was some years before she started to carry out her attacks, as far as we know. What changes in someone's mind to be seemingly a hard-working, dedicated professional and then switching to being a killer?
In the cases of these Munchausen individuals, there is no real switching. The propensity is always there. It's stumbling across a situation where there are infinite possibilities. In other words, you're in a chaotic situation, you're in control of a small patient. The patient cannot speak up for themselves and say, oh, the nurse did that to me yesterday. And therefore, you're in an ideal situation to fall into the role of someone who will take control of that individual, kill that individual, and then stare at the parents morbidly, satisfying themselves on the reaction.
What did you make of the methods that she used to kill? Because she changed the method, didn't she? She didn't stick to just one way of killing these babies. What can we read into that? Was that all part of her being able to trying to divert attention?
The methods she chose, basically, I think, reflect the idea that she pre-thought a lot of it. She actually did realise that if you use the same methods, say if you use insulin all the time, this would begin to register with the professionals around you and the people that are watching the outcomes. So she varied it with air and milk even, and these were always carefully chosen as things that would dissipate and not be easily detected afterwards.
All right, we must leave it there, but we do appreciate your time and analysis. Dr. David Holmes, thank you very much. You're watching a Sky News special. Coming up after the break, we're going to hear from the parents of a baby Lucy Letby attempted to murder here at the Countess of Chester Hospital. Hello again, welcome back. The parents of one of the babies, Lucy Letby, attempted to murder, has told Sky News that Letby put their family through hell, and what she did is going to affect them for the rest of their lives. To protect the identity of the parents, Sky News has allowed them to speak anonymously, voiced by actors. This is what they told us.
So how are you feeling at the moment with everything that you've been through over the last few weeks?
Me personally, it's been very difficult, very mentally and physically draining. Also working at the same time, getting time off work, it's been challenging.
And what has been the most difficult part of this trial for you?
Previously, we didn't know our other child was involved with the attempted murder. We knew about baby M, what happened on the 9th of April 2016. And Until then, we were very, very happy.
Oh, we were ecstatic. First-time parents. We were happy and knew everything was as good as it could have been at that time.
And then just tell me when you suddenly realised things were going to go wrong.
Well, on the Saturday, the 9th of April, we'd come down with my parents to see the boys. Everything was going well. We held the boys. We went back upstairs because my wife was in the ward upstairs, and then within 10, 15 minutes, a nurse is coming charging upstairs saying, you need to come back down. And I was there first because my wife was still in bed. I was the first one into the unit at that time. And the image that I saw was just horrendous. That image I'll never forget because it's on the brain. When I went down, I saw doctors around the trolley and they're just pumping his heart like a rag doll, really.
One of the nurses, Mary Griffith, said to me, I've not done anything. I've not done anything. And Lucy was behind her. And I was just praying to God, saying, what has happened to my child? I've not done anything wrong in my life to anybody, so why do I have to suffer? And then after 30 minutes, he recovered.
How did you feel at that point?
I was just full of the tears. I didn't know what to think. We're first-time parents. We didn't know what was going on.
What did you see of Lucy Letby at that point?
She was just standing like that.
How was she standing?
Very calm and cool. At the time, her body language and her behaviour totally changed. After the incident happened, I think she was unsuccessful with killing my kids. That's why she was very annoyed with us. She thought that I couldn't kill your baby.
Did you suspect Lucy Letby at any point in that time?
No, not at that time. She was very cool, calm, calculated, and a criminal-minded lady, but we didn't notice anything at the time.
We didn't know anything even afterwards until the police came knocking.
When the police came to our house and told us, your second child is involved with Lucy, we were shocked and we said we didn't know about baby L. Why had they not told us about baby L? We did know about baby M, but they hadn't told us about baby L.
So they didn't tell you that he had gone into any difficulty at all?
No, not the insulin and all the blood sugars and all that. We didn't know anything about that until the police came.
And how did you feel when you heard that?
We just couldn't believe it because we knew about baby M and we accepted that bit. But we didn't know what baby L had gone through the night before. It was just unbelievable. We couldn't believe it.
When you have heard Lucy Letby talk in court time and time again, denying she harmed any babies,
I feel very sick of her. Oh, my God. I go home with a headache. I have to take paracetamol every day when I go home just because I have to listen to her lie and lie and lie. And I say now, enough. Don't tell lies, please. When you've sat there in the dock and taken the oath, I think just please say everything that's right and true. So why are you telling lies?
What has Lucy Letby taken from your family?
Everything. She took everything. Our joy, happiness.
I'm not the same person I was before. I was happy-go-lucky, you know, go with the flow, always smiling. But now I've become reserved, so like in the shell kind of thing. And there's no doubt it's going to affect me for the rest of my life. There's no way you can get away from it. It's been hell, to be honest.
Very, very horrendous.
What has it meant for you to know that Lucy Letby has been able to work on a unit for years with people knowing they were concerned about her and knowing what it's done to your family and to so many other families? How does it feel to know that that has happened and been allowed to happen?
It's hard to put into words just how it could have gone on so long, why it went on so long. These are the answers we need. But that's a different part of the investigation. We have to wait for the hospital to answer those questions, but it could have been stopped. That's the fact.
Do you think the hospital should have done more to get Lucy Letby off the unit?
Yes. Yes, definitely.
Definitely. Why did they wait until 2016?
Do you think that some babies could have survived?
I think so, yeah. If they'd acted upon the initial suspicions, then they definitely could have stopped any more babies being attacked.
What has life been like day to day? Has she caused any long, life-changing injuries to your sons?
As far as we know, baby M did have a scan and the doctors did say that one part of his brain is damaged permanently. So he may deviate from his peers and stuff. At the moment, if you look at him, you wouldn't think any differently, just like a normal child. So it's something we'll just have to keep monitoring over the years as the years progress.
Is that something you're worrying about every day?
Yeah,
Yes.
How let down do you feel by the hospital?
very, very let down. They could have stopped it. They could have done it a lot earlier. And they need to be held accountable as well. Obviously, I know they didn't know there was a poisoner at work, and it's difficult to prove that. But the doctors did speak up. The doctors spoke up in 2015. They should have acted on that.
If you were to describe Lucy Letby, what does she mean to you?
To me, nothing. She means nothing. Just an evil person. There's no way she should have been able to get away with it for so long.
And she already proved with her note. She wrote, "I am evil and did it with a purpose." We see through her note. The green note, the yellow note. So she proved her note already. We saw it. She said, "I'm evil."
How does Lucy Letby being found guilty provide justice for you? What does it mean for you?
It provides a bit of closure. Not completely, but at least a bit of closure that they got the right person and she's going to be punished for it.
I'll be very happy. If the punishment is proper and the proper sentence, then I would be very happy.
Is there any sentence that will justify what you've been through and what your sons have been through?
Life sentence. I want a life sentence.
But it's not going to do justice no matter what. She's taken lives. She's tried to take other babies' lives. So whatever sentence she gets is not going to be enough. It will be justice, but it won't be enough. Whatever the sentence comes.
The horrors that one mother and father went through. The mum saying there that she prayed to God as doctors worked on her baby, trying to resuscitate him. The dad saying quite simply, it could have been stopped sooner. Other babies could have been saved. Sentiments from so many people today. Do stay with us here on this Sky News special. Coming up after the break, we're going to hear from one mother who now believes Lucy Letby attempted to attack her child.
I grew up in a family where there was lots of poverty. So both my parents were heroin addicts, and as you can imagine, that resulted in us being hungry most days. So I went to school without food in my belly, without a hug. And it was a really difficult childhood. And it made it really hard for me to do well in education. Children expected to sit still every day for hours every day. And when you've been through what I've been through, it was very hard to concentrate. So I didn't perform as well as what I could. I was poor at a time where there was lots of investment in poverty and there was lots of investment in people like me. And so when I, as a young woman who was living in a council house, who was on benefits, I really wanted to better my life, but I just didn't have any opportunity. I didn't know anybody who went to university, but I was lucky that when I wanted to change my life, there were all these systems and services in place to empower me. So I was lucky that I was able to go to a foundation year and I suppose take that first step into education. And that was a massive change for me. I actually learned, my schooling had taught me that I wasn't very clever because I failed. I didn't get my GCSEs. I didn't perform well. I actually thought that meant that I wasn't very bright. And then when I had an opportunity to go to university when I was 23 and the system was in place to support me, I learned this amazing lesson that I'm actually really, really intelligent. I had an inconsistent experience in school. So actually 2 of my teachers saved my life. If it wasn't for them 2 teachers, one of them actually used to change me every day and give me fresh underwear. Another one actually taught me about the wonders of Shakespeare and really went out of his way to ensure that I participated. But I had this inconsistent experience with my teachers and with education. So some people really didn't understand poverty and what that looks like in the classroom. So they had expectations of me that I just wasn't capable of reaching. And my belief is, I'm not angry now because anger doesn't serve me and doesn't help me in trying to make things fairer. But I do think that we need to improve how we see poverty and maybe design education in a way that reaches those on the margins. The ones who are already doing well, they're going to do well anyway. But I mean, there's girls like me in every classroom across England right now who have the potential to thrive like I am and contribute to the world, and we're not actually serving them in the proper way.
Welcome back. A mother has told Sky News she fears her newborn baby was harmed by child murderer Lucy Letby the day after she made a complaint about the nurse. Lindsay Artell gave birth to her son Asa in March 2016 as Letby was attacking babies and stalking the corridors of the neonatal unit here at the Countess of Chester Hospital. I spoke to Lindsay about her experience.
It was March time, so it was 30 weeks or so. Finished work, and on the day we'd gone in to get monitored, and they all came rushing in, and it was an emergency C-section, and it was done within like 10 minutes. It was exciting, but it was nervous because I didn't hear a cry or anything. You don't hear anything, so it was a bit quite shocking. And even though I could see he'd gone to the other side, I'd sent Alan, my husband, over to take a picture. And the oxygen hadn't been flowing because there'd been a placenta eruption. So he obviously didn't look like himself. So they had to take him straight off. So I just seen him as they went out. And then I didn't see him later. He was born at 10 to 3 and I'd probably seen him about midnight that night.
And Lucy Letby was working on the unit at the time. What dealing did you have with her?
So relaying the information to my husband, literally of what the doctor had told me that morning, of him, how he was getting on. Like I've said, she wasn't actually Asa's nurse, she was covering somebody's break. Overheard our conversation and felt the need to come over and tell us that I'm sorry overhearing a conversation, but I don't like parents getting, you know, their hopes up too much because you never quite know what could happen. Now, as a parent, I absolutely erupted and was like furious, like how dare you take that hope away from me? And then as a professional, I'm saying to the matron and to herself that it was completely inappropriate to take somebody. You can't speak to people like that. I'm there when people get news terminal illnesses. Never once have I ever said, oh, well, you know, I wouldn't hold out too much hope, you know, because everyone needs hope.
Do you think because you made that complaint about Letby, the next day she took out her revenge?
It made me feel quite guilty because there's 2 babies or possible in there, including my son, who could have been victims of hers. So I feel guilty a little bit that I may have drove her onto or drove something to happen, a bit of anger. You just feel so lost. So I don't know, really, just it's horrific to think of because you wouldn't think that nobody'd be capable of that.
People had their suspicions.
Definitely, way before Asa was born. So Asa was born in March 2016, and when alarms would go off during the night especially, there would be a phrase that people would use, colleagues that I know have used, and are sort of commenting on, I wonder if Lucy's working tonight.
What's your reaction now you know the guilty verdict?
Then a guilty verdict is brilliant for the people who have got some sort of justice. It doesn't bring anyone back, but it gives some people some answers, but it leaves many people who haven't had any answers. So that needs to happen, that needs to be looked into.
People like you?
Like me. There's many probably like me. And I'm hoping that me doing this is going to help somebody, and then for them to come and think maybe mine needs looking into as well, because they've got every right for them to be looked into. And if it doesn't come out and they're okay and they weren't involved, then great. But it needs to be looked at.
Lindsay Artell bravely speaking out, and I've been in touch with her today, and she says that she is very pleased to hear that there is going to be an independent inquiry. And tonight we've had a statement from the Countess of Chester Hospital in response to my interview. This is what they had to say. Following the trial of former neonatal nurse Lucy Letby, the Trust welcomes the announcement of an independent inquiry by the Department of Health and Social Care. In addition, the Trust will be supporting the ongoing investigation by Cheshire Police. Due to ongoing legal considerations, it would not be appropriate for the Trust to make any further comment at this time. Well, let's finish with another chat to Tom Parmenter, who has followed this horrific case from the start. And Tom, Lucy Letby driven away tonight in a prison van. She is in custody once again tonight. In fact, she's been in jail for some time in the run-up to this trial and, of course, during the trial itself. What happens next?
She will be sentenced on Monday, and we know that, of course, the families have tracked this by being in court or keeping abreast of proceedings very closely, and I've no doubt that they will be apprehensive about that moment, but also it will bring some relief. But you have to remember that while, of course, the thoughts of everyone are with those families who have suffered so much over the past 7 years of the questions, the suspicions, the investigation, the court case, and now there are answers, but not for every family, because the jury could not reach verdicts on some of the cases, some of the charges that Lucy Letby faced. So that is a desperate situation for those families, having been through all that process. Not to have a final answer in this case is something that is perhaps even harder to understand. They will know that there is going to be that independent inquiry, but as you say, the first hurdle, or the next hurdle, is her sentencing on Monday in Manchester Crown Court, and we can expect a very significant prison term. The only broadly comparable case is that of Beverly Allett, who in the early 1990s over in Lincolnshire was convicted of killing 4 children and attempting to murder others. She received 13 life sentences. Lucy Letby's crimes are on a greater scale than that. There are profound questions for the NHS Trust, and that will go on for many months, if not years. But that sentencing hearing in Manchester, the next hurdle for the families who, of course, have been through such unimaginable trauma, through losing their children and then learning the truth about what happened.
Now, we're not expecting her to be in court.
No, we're not. She was in court for some of the verdicts being delivered. It's been spread over a number of days, but in recent days, Lucy Letby has chosen not to be in the courtroom itself. There will be views around that, but that has been her decision so far. It's a hugely difficult situation, and you can't imagine what those families are going through.
Yeah, there will be views on that, certainly. Tom, thank you very much indeed. Tom Parminter there. So, today marks the end of Britain's longest ever murder trial. We have had 10 months of very distressing evidence. Many of the attacks carried out by Lucy Letby were by injecting air into youngsters. Jurors were told it was one of her favourite ways of killing or trying to kill. Parents of the 7 children killed by Letby and the 6 she attempted to murder heard how doctors and staff here at the Countess of Chester Hospital harboured suspicions for months that she was responsible. Now a public inquiry will take place, which is expected to examine evidence, we've heard this evening, that other parents believe the nurse tried to kill their newborn children. Tonight, here in Chester, there's anger, immense sadness and a sense that there may well be more terrible revelations to come. Good night.